Thank you, Pastor David.
Thank you. Okay, we ready? You ready? Yeah. Cool. All right, so this session we are going to talk about principles for building a healthy church. If something healthy should grow, all right? So often we focus on church growth when I think we should be focusing on church health, because health comes to those things that are, growth comes to those things that are healthy, all right? So that's where we're going, and hopefully we're going to have some time for questions at the end of this. If you if you have a question, maybe just type it down, write it down, and we'll see if we can get to it at the end rather than try to remembering it at the end. Maybe just make a little note to yourself as we go along. We get to do ministry in a tension. And it's very important that we just accept that. And there's nothing wrong with that. See if you can hear the tension in this verse from 1 Corinthians 16, 8 and 9. Paul says, I will stay on at Ephesus until Pentecost because a great door of effective work is open to me and there are many who oppose me. Can you hear the tension there? Yeah? So at one point he's saying God has opened the effectual door, and the other tension is there's many who oppose me. Guess what? We get to do ministry in tension of those two things. God's doing great things, and there are many who oppose me, and we get to do life in the tension, because in that tension we grow, right? That tension is there deliberately from God so that we grow. This church needs dipsticks, all right? Because dipsticks help us grow. Don't try and get rid of all of your dipsticks, because better the dipstick you know than the dipstick you don't know. Because I guarantee if you get rid of all of your dipsticks, here comes another one next Sunday, all right? So you better just stick with your dipsticks, because they're here to help you grow, you know. Those are the people that, you know what a dipstick does? It finds all the black stuff. You know, it gets right down in there, and just when you think you're just so squeaky clean and cool, yeah, you got some black stuff. Look at that. And the dipstick is uniquely made as a person to find the black stuff that you thought you had ascended to the Most High. You had now got beyond all that. No, here comes the dipstick. They'll find that thing in you. All right? So they're here as part of this tension that God creates, and that's called life. All right? We get to do life in the tension. We get to do ministry in the tension. And a good question to ask is this a tension that we need to manage, or a problem we can actually solve? That's really important question, because sometimes we're trying to solve things that cannot be solved. People will always say it is too loud. Others will say it's too soft. It's a tension that needs to be managed. The sound in church is not a problem you will ever solve this side of heaven. Because some people will say it's too loud, it's too this, all we can do is manage that tension. All right? It's too loud, sit in the foyer. Okay? We'll know. I'm slow. No, no, we can't do that. But look, we've just got this dilemma of some people's hearing is more acute than others. All right? So we just manage the tension, but we can never solve that problem. Other things are problems we can solve. Yeah, we can do better. We can solve that. Others, we're just tweaking that tension. And so it's really important that we just acknowledge that about church life. I kept waiting for this one to go away. It's yet to happen. All right? I kept waiting. You know, people would come in and say how great my church was because they were watching this one. But I was very sensitized to all the crapola that was going on. Mrs. Kafoops wasn't happening. Building Blogs was threatening to leave. I was aware of that. So they would be waxing eloquent saying how great my church was, but I knew about Billy. All right. So I'm not joining them in their praise. And so I was waiting for all this stuff to go away. It has not gone away. And now I'm learning to do life in the tension, right? That's it. It's more about me living in the tension, doing life in the tension, all right? So can we just acknowledge that at the outset? That's it. Welcome. This is what we're doing. We're doing life in this tension. If Paul had the moxie to be able to admit and put it in the Bible, I said, I better write this down because one day it'll be in the Bible. He said, no, I'm only kidding. He said, I'm going to stay here because a great door's open to me. Yay. But there are many who oppose me. Huh? Okay, well, if he could write that, then we could admit to that as well, all right? So what we're going to do now is talk about, there it goes. Let's just all look at that. All right, can you grab that for me? We're going to talk about a healthy church in the same way as we understand a healthy, thanks, bud, healthy person, and that is a balance between spirit, soul, and body. If you've got a healthy person, they've got a good harmony going on between their spirit, soul, and their body, all right? And a healthy church, we're going to use that as an illustration of a healthy church. The spirit of the church, the soul of the church, the body of the church. Is that, you tracking with me? All right. So, when we speak of the body of the church, we're talking about the organization, the structure, the rosters, the policies, the chains of command, the flow chart, and all that. That's the body of the church. That is the structure. Okay. Very important part of the church. And if you're serving in one of those related areas, you are an absolute champion. Then we have the soul. That's the culture of the church, the morale of the church. Incredibly important part of the church, the culture, the morale. And then, of course, the God factor, the spirit area, all right? And what we actually need is a healthy appreciation for all three of these areas. I would say, this is for you to digest, that many people automatically defer to the spirit being the most important part. Well, I want to tell you, if you're going to build a healthy church, that's wrong. Because I've seen guys with incredible spiritual ministries and their churches are like a dog's breakfast. They are all over the place. They can't grow them. It's like pouring water into the sand. But great gift on their life, all right? So no, we actually need these other areas as well as body and soul. All right, so let's start with talking about the body. That's the organization, as I said, policy, structures, rosters. Yeah, we love those things. A scripture to make this a legal session, quoting from the Bible, Exodus chapter 18, verses 13 to 27. Here's Moses, man of God, dialing down, getting all these downloads from God, such a spiritual man. And he's there from morning till evening with a long queue of people coming to get counsel. His father-in-law, Jethro, looks at this and says, this is not good, bud. You know, you're going to wear yourself out and you need to create structure. So he was a spiritual man with no structure. And he was going to wear himself out because he lacked someone to come alongside him and give him some structure. So, if you know the story, he instigated this delegation. So here's what we mean by a good structure. Yeah? The goal is to have a structure that releases gifted people to work together in harmony to achieve the maximum result. That's a good structure. The tail is not wagging the dog. In other words, everything isn't serving the structure. The structure is not a straitjacket. The structure it releases gifted people. It releases them to work together in harmony to achieve the maximum result. That is a good structure, all right? So to make that possible, we have to work out how people can function where they fit, all right? So we have to work out how people have been graced by God and where they fit best within this structure. Because remember, our goal is actually to release gifted people, all right? So the structure is there to provide a framework for gifted people to express their ministry, right? That's what it's doing. How frustrating for a muso, incredibly gifted, talented muso, to rock up, the equipment isn't here, nobody else turned up, the roster was all botched up. Well, that gifted person is going to get very frustrated with the structure. Wow. And we're going to lose gifted people because we didn't give them a structure to release their gift. They needed a platform. We needed to provide it for them. Not that they're some star, but they're trying to release their gift, and we haven't given them the correct structure to do that. All right? So it's possible. So backing up, what we try and do, now I should preface everything I'm going to say with this is me sharing what's worked for us, but please eat the meat, spit out the bones. That's what we've got to do. We've got to have the maturity in the room to go, you know what, that's good for you, but it doesn't work in our context. So what we try to do with our structure is try to work out where gifted people fit in the structure. Now, when we talk about this, because this is a big deal for me to try and work out what is Jesus graced you to do, where do you fit in the body, and let's put you there. That's creating structure. We're not talking about whether you're graced to hand out communion. We're not really wanting you to hear, listen, sorry, can we stack chairs? Oh, I'm not graced for that. All right, no. There's generic things that everybody gets to do that, okay? We're not saying, that's my calling, to stack chairs, give me the microphone. No, you can stack chairs, all right? Everybody can do that part, all right? So we're talking about children's ministry. We don't want people in there yelling at our kids, all right? Because we want people in there that are graced to do that. God bless you if you're here in the room. And musicians, we don't want singers that sound like chooks in trouble, all right? We want people that can hit the notes. You might be in an ego movie about who you are, but, if you sound like an elephant on heat, we do not want you in the team, all right? I don't care what you think Jesus said to you. He would have given you the vocal cords appropriately if that was really him talking about. So we want to look, okay, where's the grace? And that determines where you fit in this structure. And now we're helping to release the gift. One of the areas where I, for quite some time, made a lot of mistakes with this whole looking at how Jesus has shaped you. That's Rick Warren stuff, shape, great stuff. And therefore that shape has determined where you fit. Right, in this structure, was this whole idea of the difference between a leader and a minister. All right, now I really need you to listen. Hopefully the coffee is kicked in, because this is a little bit tricky for people to understand, because we rise and fall on our definitions. And when we start to tease these two apart, people tend to get all sort of wobbly on me. But leaders and ministers are not the same thing. If this person is up here doing a great job leading us in worship, they are not in fact leading us, they are ministering. That's a ministry. Most leadership takes place in the boardroom, in the back room, it's hidden away. Leadership is what's provided this platform for us to stand on and hold this microphone. So a lot of leadership is actually not visibly seen. It's actually the decision makers that are going on in the boardroom, etc., and thinking through strategies, etc., and so on. For a long time, I would observe people who were good at their ministry and automatically thought they'd be an excellent leader. So I unplugged them from their ministry and said, guess what? You're so good at that, I'm going to put you in charge. And they floundered and spiraled down and burnt. All right? I'd unplugged them from their grace, misinterpreting their success at their ministry as leadership, and unplug them from the place I should have left them in the structure, because I interpreted their success as you're so good at that, you should be leading it. Wrong. And I had to learn the hard way that it's possible to put good people in the wrong place. And the whole reason why they're floundering is not because they're not great. Me, put them in the wrong place. You know, it's like writing with your left hand. You know, if you're right-handed and you start writing with your left hand, it takes you twice as long and you still do a lousy job. All right? And for me to stand over you chanting, come on, yeah, it's not going to work. You are right-handed and I'm forcing you to write with your left hand. It's going to take you longer and, you know, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Now, sure, you know, you can push yourself, but the fact of the matter is you can do it twice as fast and a lot better if you just let me put my pen in my right hand, for crying out loud. And so we need to make sure we're respecting what Jesus has done with the distribution of grace, right? He has predetermined where you fit, right? We got to work out what's Jesus distributed and go with that. Not when it comes to generic things, stacking chairs, giving out communion, etc., and so on, but obviously specific areas. So here's some thoughts about leadership in ministry. Leadership builds churches, ministry builds people. All right? There's two very different things going on there. So, you know, an illustration would be, see, Jesus was ambidextrous. He was left-handed and he was right-handed, as in he could flip-flop from one to the other as the situation required. Well, they make, obviously, the best guys, you know, and gals that can do that. If you've tracked some of the movement of certain predominant figures in our movement, the ACC, you've got someone like Donna Crouch, who is a leader. And you can move leaders. Why? Because they lead. So now, so Brian started out, he said, I want you to lead the youth. She did it. Now I'm going to unplug you and move you. You can't do that with Grace Ministries because you just took them out of their zone. But listen, I've led everything in church. I've led it, apart from women's ministry, for obvious reasons. But you name it, everything else I've led. Now, how come you can do that? Well, because it's about understanding how things fit and putting things there. I don't do the ministry. I'm providing the structure for ministry to happen. I'm just leading that part. I could lead our music department without ever needing to pick up a guitar. Why? Because I'm creating a structure for ministry to happen, right? So Donna, I wouldn't even know what she's leading now, but she was able to move around. Her portfolio has changed so many times because she's not locking into a particular ministry. As soon as that happens, she can't move, but because of this leader. Do you get that? And so now listen, if you could put me on repeat, I would say this over and over and over and over and over. One is not superior to the other. Leaders are useless without ministers, and ministers are useless without leaders. We got to stop this whole superiority thing when as soon as I say leader, that's what everybody should aspire to. You know, that's great. One day you're going to be a leader. Well, that infers that what I'm doing now is junior league. Yeah? So no, it's not like that at all. They're both serving in different capacities, all right? And so they both actually need one another. You get that? So just working out, so people, you know what, it's pretty obvious. The minister part's a bit obvious because it's just when they get in their grace zone, they're awesome. It's like, wow, yeah? You just watch them. We talk about thermals in our church. People are in their thermal. You know, because, you know, I grew up in far north Queensland. How many of you noticed I got a lisp? Yeah. So TH words are hard for me. That's why I don't preach from the book of Thessalonians much. I avoid that book. It's hard. TH words are hard, all right? Lisping my way through a sermon. All right. People in the front row wear raincoats and umbrellas. David's on this morning. Up goes the umbrella. All right. So thermals. You know, we watch these hawks and they'd find their thermal. And once they found their thermal, they set their wings. They wouldn't flap them. Effortlessly staying in the sky. That's somebody in their grace. Everybody goes, wow. But we try and do that. We're, you know, flapping our wings like crazy. So much effort. They're just like, no problem. So we want people in their thermals and identifying that. And so, yeah, learning this difference. How do you know a leader? Well, they're just bossy. And they're bossy because they can see that is supposed to go there, for crying out loud. What are you putting it there for? Put it there. It's like they can just see it, you know. And so, you know, if nobody is going to lead, they will just find themselves, they have to, you know, the eye starts twitching first and then it's like it's like if no one's going to lead this, I have to, because it's waste. They can't stand waste. It's just such a waste. They're like, I have to lead this. So you can see them in the playground at preschool. They're the kids, you know, you're going to be this, you're going to be that in the game, and I will lead it. You know, and they're the kids that are constantly changing the rule as the games go on. No, let's make it that I'm blah, blah, blah. Yeah, they're the leader. All right. They're a leader in the making. All right. They're those ones. So they can handle highly, you know, levels of complexity. So some leaders, you know, max out a little bit earlier than others. Nothing wrong with that. But obviously, these people can have lots of spinning plates and they're not popping Panadol. All right, they're okay with that. All right, they got all these things going. Put down the phone, talk that, and then they're up the phone, and it's okay. That's just another day for them. Whereas other people, whoa, bit too much sand for my truck, you know. And so they're so again, that's not superior and inferior. That is just, this is what Jesus has done, and we all get to hear, well done, good and faithful. It's a level playing field. There's no high ground in front of the throne of Jesus. We're all there to give an account for the grace that we've received, all right? So just know that about a structure that you're dealing with grace, you're dealing with, is this person leader, minister? Some people, as I say, great, they're ambidextrous, they can move from one to the other because they can see what's appropriate. All right, let me give you quickly some other things structurally that have worked for our church. And again, eat the meat, spit out the bones. I have built Myers. Now, what do I mean by that? I have not built a boutique. I built Myers. In other words, if you go to Myers, you can buy an electric blanket, a coffee machine, you know, you can buy towels, crockery, you know, and you have not left the roof of Myers. Is that not correct? It's a department store, all right? I have built a department store because I find yes easier than no. So provided what this person wants to do and start is in keeping with the vision and culture of our church, then I'm all for it. Let's have that happening. So in our church, we've got social justice, we've got a strong missions arm, we went to high schools, universities, we've got all sorts of stuff. As you never start a ministry without a minister. All right, so as the ministers have become available, I have started those things. Is that making sense? So really, when you look at a big church, it's an illusion. Da-na-na-na. It is multiple sub-congregations all coming together in one place on Sunday. That's all it is. Because if you look closely, there's the kids, that's a sub-congregation. There's the teenagers, there's the young adults, there's the young marrieds, then there's the older ones. They're all sub-congregations. And they all come together at once. And we go, wow, look at the crowd. Well, actually, what you're witnessing is all these sub-congregations. So what I did was I got a leader, because leaders have to make things grow. Leaders just have to do it. It's just they got to build. They're just in them. It doesn't matter what you give them, they want to grow it. They want to build it. So I took a leader and I put them over each one of those sub-congregations. And then I meet with the leaders. All right? Yeah, like that. And so that's the secret, and tell everybody. Okay? That's how we've sort of done it at Life City. All right? So we didn't build a boutique. I hear people saying, oh, we're only into blah, blah, blah. Well, God bless you, but you just build a boutique. Yeah. You've just so narrowed. You've said no to more people than you've said yes. By saying, we only do. No. The kingdom is a big place. Yeah. It's a very big place. It's far easier to say yes than no. All right? You with me on that one? Yeah. All right? The other thing is that we understood that really what we're building, now for those of you who are really spiritual, you won't like this illustration, but never mind. You'll get over it. Okay, that's a funnel. Okay, and it's raining and the funnel's catching it and it goes in the bucket. All right, and so eventually the bucket fills up with water. Okay, artist, I am not. Okay, so I won't do this with you guys, but I say to people now, look at that. What is the most important part of that diagram? And the number of times people say the funnel, it's amazing. And that's what we've become. As churches, we've become very funnel focused. We got a bigger funnel, we got a shiny funnel. Come to our funnel, and we're sort of all working on our funnels. All right, big funnel, small funnel, shiny funnel, and we're so working on our funnel. When how many of you realize that whole funnel is redundant if it doesn't rain? Yeah, right. So what we did a long time ago now, we started working on the cloud. We called it the cloud of awareness. It sounds very cool. And basically our goal was to be the best known church among the unchurched in our city. Never mind the churched. Yeah. Our goal is to be the best known church among the unchurched. So we went really hard after that, and that's building the cloud. Because how do you know that what makes a cloud rain is in the end, it's got so much moisture that it starts to rain. All right? And so for years, we sowed into primary schools and high schools and universities, and we did stuff in the community and all sorts of stuff. Found out that this person, we give away heaps of white goods, dryers, washing machines, every year. We raise all this money and we find the needy and we buy all this stuff for them. And we have sown into the cloud. And then it started to rain, and it hasn't stopped raining, you know. And so every week people are coming to Christ, people are coming to Christ. So up here is what we call wide mouth events. There, our Mother's Day, Father's Day, our Bring To. We do not have, now this is just us, okay? This is just us. We don't have altar calls and wide mouth events. All a wide mouth event is about is come and see that Christians do not have two heads and are weird, cringy people. We are, this is, come and meet Christians, all right? So a success for us in a wide mouth event is how many unchurched people came. Not how many came to Christ and prayed the sinner's prayer, but how many unchurched people came to our wide mouth event. The whole idea of a wide mouth event is people got in their cars and worked out where we were and had a great connection moment, all right? But how many of you know a funnel starts to slope into a very deliberate focal point? So this is where we learn one of the names of God is Jehovah Sneaky. All right? Because little do they know, little did they know that this is all leading up to something. All right. Oh. So at this point, there is an altar call. There is a moment of decision that we're asking people to make at this focal point. All right? So these wide mouth events would be lots of youth meetings where they come and eat all our pizza, and we're just glad that they're there, they're wrecking our toilets and clogging up the plumbing, and they're doing all that sort of stuff. All right, but there comes a moment when the decision is made, and that's when things get very deliberate. And this is our disciple process. So down here, we have New Christians class and life groups and etc. and so on. But, guess what? The water actually doesn't stay there. Where does it go? It goes back to the cloud. All right? That's not why they're there. They're not there to be caught in this holy huddle. All right? They're not here to be, let's join hands and sing Kumbaya and wait for Jesus to come back. No, they're actually there to be sent back into the cloud, back into the community, sharing their faith, sharing about Jesus, sharing about what they're experiencing. And so there's this cyclic experience going on. If you want to have a long-term view, then that's the model. But lots of people don't like that because obviously they want a more quick thing. And so the slow, laborious task of building the cloud of awareness doesn't really fit their understanding, but that's the model we've taken. Let's go after the unchurched and work at that. Cool? All right? We try and create as many doors to our church as possible. If the only door to the church is our services, woe is us. So we want multiple doors of points of entry. So Sunday services is just one of those doors. We have play groups in our building. We have a school. We have all sorts. Our school is for the guys and girls that can't learn in a classroom. So we've collected up all the kids that are the troublemakers who mainly because they just don't learn by sitting behind a desk listening to a teacher. So we've developed a school. We've got those sort of kids who also punch holes in our walls and block up our toilets. But it's all good because it's all part of the cloud. Because of course there comes a point where they give their lives to Christ and they go back to their gangs and whatnot. So multiple doors. All sorts of ways that people can connect with our church. That's what I'm talking about, all right? So the more doors we have, the better there is, all right? So we work at that. Last point about structure is, am I going for time here?
Whatever.
Okay. That you hold your mission tightly, but you hold your methods loosely. All right. So, of course, during the 20 years I've been where I am now, our methods have changed. My goodness, so many different methods we've used. But our mission, bringing people to Jesus, discipling them, has not changed. Let's face it, if Jesus was to rock up today, it wouldn't be on a donkey and he wouldn't be wearing a robe and sandals. He'd be dressed something like myself. He only wore those things because that's what you wore in that time. And he only rode a donkey because that was the mode of travel. And so, of course, methods change. So we change our methods, but we stick to our mission. There is some things that go on in our church that I don't like. But I let them go on. You know why? Because we stick with our principles, but I don't get to, sorry, Pastor Mark, but I don't know, this is me just speaking into the moment here, but I don't get to enforce my preferences, all right? I don't like pink, all right? So should I say, don't you dare paint that pink, all right? Because I'm 60 years old, and of course I've got some preferences, yeah? So I have to say that's a preference of a 60-year-old man. But a principle is Jesus is being worshipped, Jesus is being honored. I'm okay with that. Of course, we're going to have different preferences, but we can't afford to relinquish our principles. Is that okay? All right. Soul is as I say, the culture, the morale. And culture is king. Culture is absolute king. We've got to understand that. And you've got to protect your culture. It's very important. Because lots of churches can have great vision, but they have a weak soul. In other words, every vision, the soul of the church needs to rise up and make it a reality. So in our movement in particular, as I get around, we're not wanting in the area of vision, but if the soul of the church, the commitment, the sacrifice, the stickability, turning up on time, if that's weak, then you can forget about your vision. It might be from God, but it'll never become a reality because the soul of the church is weak. The culture is weak. Do you understand? Yeah? We can have great ideas, Jesus-inspired ideas, but at the end of the day, people have to give, they have to commit, they have to follow through, they have to stick at it. That's the soul of the church. I love what Nehemiah says in Nehemiah 4:6. He says, so we built the wall, and the entire wall was joined together up to half its height because the people had a mind to work. Yes. Did you hear that? Yes. Wow. Wow, I appreciate this guy was not beating his chest saying, I told you I'd heard from God. He's pointing at the people and saying, we got it done because they worked. Yeah? And that's speaking to people in the room right now is, sure, Nehemiah heard from God. It was a God-ordained vision to rebuild the wall, but he's acknowledging the soul was strong. The people rallied. They got it done. So many churches, they neglect the soul, and they make it all about the vision, but they don't. They're blindsided by you've actually got to, so good leaders don't attempt anything that's beyond the reach of the strength of soul of the church at that time. So sometimes they got it right. They did hear from God, but they actually tried to reach for something beyond where the soul of the church was at. And so some leaders need to really, pastors and leaders need to work at that. I can always tell when I've gone to a church where the leader is, the acronym that he's going for is a strong soul, because you go into the loos, you sit down, and there's the vision statement right there. It's on the back of the loo, and then you're washing your hands, and there's the core values or whatever's happening. It's got it plastered everywhere because it's boom, 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 pumping the culture. I've heard Pastor Mark do that since I've been here. He said, come on, That's us saying, come on, let's rise up. This is a great conference, courage. This is great. But let's rise up, respond, and take advantage of what's being provided for us. So, it's great to have vision, but people are still going to need to finance it, run it, and sustain it. All right? So, working on soul. How do we do that? In our church, as I said in the last point, we work very much on finding out where people fit. We interview them, particularly when they're coming into partnership. Part of our partnership interview process is working out how God's shaped them, spiritual gifts, heart, abilities, personality, experience. If you haven't heard that from Rick Warren, he works on that whole thing of shape. All right, so we're working out that. We interview them, we get them to do. We're working hard to try and work out, well, how's God shaped you? Now, why is that important? Because as I said, when we're out of our grace, we burn out very quickly. We're flattening our battery. You're in a dangerous spot right now because I'm in my grace. So I'm actually up here charging my battery in front of you. You might be, oh man, coffee time. It's like, oh, no, I'm going, So you're in a dangerous spot. I'm not going to wear out because I'm actually charging, because I'm in my grace right now. But put me in children's ministry, my battery will be flat in no time. Pouring tea and coffee, oh boy, he's flattened his battery after the first cup he poured. Oh, there, sir. How was your day? All right, so exaggeration to make a point. All right, I think if I don't stop now, we won't ever have any time for questions. And if we don't, well, we might have time to finish the last point. But we've already sort of covered a wide spectrum of stuff there. Is there anything at all that I've talked about that you'd want a little bit more me drilling down on before we just... Yep, there's a hand up the back. Cool. Let's have our assistant go and bring the roving mic.
Yeah, g'day. Just curious to know how you'd see life groups working, given all your business models and
okay. How do I see life groups working in the church? Yeah, absolutely critical part of that. To me, is where real discipleship is happening. Our reality is if your whole Christian experience revolves around a 30-minute, 40-minute sermon over, your journey, then man, you're just getting a patchwork quilt of your theology is just a patchwork quilt. In life groups, we can do life together. We can forgive one another. We can really start to drill down on what it actually means to be a disciple. So, they're one of our core values. So we, this coming Sunday, next Sunday, we'll be, giving life groups in our church a really big push. Doing life in groups is a big part of it. So does that answer your question? Yeah, that's right.
Sorry, just a real quick follow-up question. So I see in churches the fact that we have a lot of people attend Sunday services that aren't necessarily keyed into a life group process.
Yep.
That don't necessarily embark on the journey of small group accountability and growth just because they feel like they've done their duty and turned up on Sunday. Mm-hmm. So how do you allocate people through that, funnel into a life group so that they're in a position where they can begin to grow Not that they're not going to do that growth by turning up on a Sunday or going to an event, but just how do you see that all fitting together?
All right. I find that the toughest people to get into groups are those that have been with me the longest. They are just not going to budge. So we work very hard on our new people. And so our simulation rate, the most people we see joining our life groups are the people joining our church because they're embracing a new culture. Whereas those that have been, doesn't matter if I danced, naked on the stage, God forbid, they would not. I don't know why I went to that as a motivation. What the heck? I need some more coffee. It's like, what I'm trying is, it doesn't matter what I said. They're just not, they're entrenched in a pattern. And, people are time poor now. So we've had to get very creative with when and how we do life groups because people are time poor. They would rather pay money to save time. It used to be the other way around. But now people are time poor, and so we get to respect that. So I'm just being honest and real about that. So we go, hard after people that are joining our church. They're more open. I want to meet new people. I want to connect. Often in Perth, there's a huge amount of immigrants. So they're really ripe to connect. They really want to be in a small group. So we've done very well with that, and that's where we put a lot of emphasis. The other thing is if you don't, then at least serve. So your volunteer group becomes a connect group. So we would be happy with that. Okay, doesn't matter what we say, you're not going to be in a life group. All right, well, serving, yeah. You should serve, and the team meeting, the debrief meeting, the get together, the hanging out, that becomes your small group connect. Cool? Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, down the front here.
Is there stuff that we can read about the ego? I find that really interesting. Is there like further reading or a book that kind of helps explain that about how you become more self-aware in that sense?
Okay, the first session. Okay, I've actually written a book. It's on Kindle. It's called Meditation on Mystery, and it talks a lot about that sort of stuff if you wanted to download that. That was my ad. Okay, yeah, up the back there.
If you have one tip for raising up other leaders, just for me specifically, like younger leaders, or just one thing or a couple of things for raising up other leaders, what would you say for that?
Believe in them. I believe in you guys. God doesn't make junk. And so everybody's got something. And I just seem to have this innate fascination of, how are you put together? What's your passion? I love to find that. So I guess in some ways I've sort of shared that with you. I am fascinated with how Jesus has shaped you. And so then I get the cool job, because I'm the primary leader, of actually having the ability to place you correctly. And I just love that. Then I get the cool job of watching you thrive. Yeah? So, wow, how cool is what I do? I get to, discover the gold and go, wow, that's where you fit, and wow, that's great. And then I watch you thrive. And it's sort of weird how I would get the credit for that. But really, I'm just creating a platform for people to grow. That's my joy. And so the rest is naturally unfolding. It's like planting a seed and watching it grow, and that's no credit to me. I just recognized what it was, and I put it in the ground and watered it. Yep, that's about it. It's not really rocket science, I don't think, anyway. Okay, how are we going? Any more questions? Come on. You can do it. Questions? Yep, over there.
Yeah, my question is around culture. So in preserving culture, the culture of the church, how important are Bible studies in ensuring that people are understanding what they need to know? They are not just getting, the wrong messages from reading inappropriate material.
Okay, no, that's a good point. But I guess it comes to the one that we haven't talked about yet, which is spirit. So that to me would actually be talking more about discipleship, which is probably more pushing into the last one, which is spirit, because culture is more who we are, you know, how we behave around here at Emerge Church, you know. One of these things is not like the other thing, you know, Sesame Street, you know, we automatically know, okay, that's not our culture to, you know, abuse people when we're parking cars. We don't do that here, okay? Don't know where you came from. Apparently that was okay, but we don't do that here, okay? So yeah, that's probably more the discipleship, what actually we're teaching the people. Yeah.
When you're trying to grow a ministry, I guess what would be your tip for, because obviously you have to have the minister, you need to have the leaders in place as well. But when you're trying to rapidly expand a ministry, I guess what would be your best tip on how to actually do that?
Good question, thank you. I'd say find somebody who's 10 years ahead of where you want to be and hook onto them and listen to whatever they're saying, podcasts, whatever they're doing. You know, have they written any books? You know, maybe even try to start an email conversation with them. That's a fast, you should say how to fast track it. I'd say that's how you fast track it. Is, in other words, see, I hear a lot of preachers and I think, wow, that's so good, but I couldn't say that because I would not be authentically me if I said it. I'd be wearing Saul's armor. So it's good, but if I said it, people will go, that's so not David. What happened? You know, that's not how David talks. I constantly get people writing scripts for me and I have to edit them and say, I don't talk like this. If I started using this terminology, they'd go, oh, yeah, he's like, somebody's shoved his hand up his back and they're just moving his mouth, you know. So I can't say it. But if I can identify say if it was my grace teaching, and I see somebody that's 10 years ahead, and I listen to them and say, that's me. I could say that, but they're saying it far better than me. Yeah, hook on to them, read, you know, go and meet them if you can, whatever. That would be a fast track, because that's what you were asking me, I thought. You know, that's how you could accelerate it very quickly. Did I answer your question? Yeah, okay. All right. Well, it's lunchtime. All right. So thank you, Pastor Mark, for the opportunity.
Fantastic. Come on, let's give a really good hand. That was great.